Thanks for engaging this message and watching it and having a heart to learn and grow in your relationship with God. But before the message gets started, I want to lay in front of you a couple convictions that are on my heart. Conviction number one is for those folks who go to Grace Fellowship. If you attend one of our campuses, I want to make sure that you understand that watching messages online or on your phone shouldn't be seen as a substitute for actually attending a service. It's so important that you get to a service, you participate in the singing and the giving and even the serving as you interact with other individuals at that campus. And so we want to make sure that you get to a campus as soon as you can. And then I also want to share a conviction for those of you that don't go to Grace. While we love that you're engaging the teachings here, we want to make sure that these teachings are just seen as supplementary to the teachings that you're getting from your primary pastor or your pastoral teaching staff at your church. So it's so important that you sit under their leadership and their authority and the teachings God has given them. With that in mind, I look forward to what God's going to do in this message. Hope that you enjoy it and that God stirs your heart as you grow in your relationship with Him.
How am I doing? Well, they told me to buy the house, get the car. I did. I got married, built a family. I'm winning at work. I've got friendships, a full calendar. So by all the markers, I'm getting it right. But something still feels unsettled, not quite there. I can't put my finger on it. What is it about my life that just feels uninspiring, unexceptional? Not bad, just okay. So how am I doing? Living the dream. Living the dream.
As we begin this new series this weekend, it comes from a lot of conversations with people, just people in all walks of life. And what we want to try to drill down to is something that we may not all have words to say, but many of us feel it, we think it, and if we don't think it or feel it, the people we know and love do, and it's underneath our experience in our culture and in our lives, particularly in suburbia. And there's a phrase that I hear a lot if I'm walking down a hallway here at Grace, and I say to someone, "How are you?" Or I run into a family member at a family event, or I go out to a meal with someone and I say, "How are you?" Oftentimes the response is, "I'm living the dream." And they say it in a lot of different tones, right? Sometimes it's like, "Living the dream." Sometimes it's like, "Living the dream." Sometimes it's like, I'm living the dream. But underneath all of that is this idea of, I'm pretty sure I'm doing what I was prescribed to do in life. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm doing the normal things that someone in my space and place and time and age and context is supposed to do. In fact, I want to invite you to grab your program. And when we think about living the dream, when people say it, I think what they're really saying, whether they're happy about it, discouraged about it, indifferent about it, what I really believe they mean is this. They're saying, I'm busy doing all the things I believe I'm supposed to be busy doing. I'm just busy doing all the things that I'm supposed to be busy doing. So I'm like college age and I'm just busy doing college stuff. It's finals, and so I'm studying and I'm going to class and I'm doing all the college things. And then, I'm at that age where I'm going to the gym, and I got a CrossFit membership, and now I'm at the age where I'm doing laundry, and I'm at that age where I'm watching the right show, and now I've got my kids in T-ball, and then we're trying to plan Chloe's 8th birthday party, and then we're making sure we go somewhere for spring break, because that's what we're supposed to do, and I'm paying the mortgage, and my 401k, I'm kind of trying to do that, and then someone told me that I should probably really mulch my yard, so I did that, and And then they said that the grass wasn't green enough, so then I got some like fertilizer. I hired a guy to come do that, and I'm just busy doing all the things I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm pretty sure that we're supposed to eat at certain places and buy certain things and chase down certain stuff, and so I'm just doing that. I mean, I have like the life that they told me to have. I've got 2.2 kids. I've got a dog. We've got a yard. We go to the beach every summer. I'm living the dream. I'm doing all the things they told me to do. And when they told me those things, it was like, okay, get through high school and go to college, and after college, maybe find somebody and do the young adult scene, and then get married and settle down and have some kids and get the house and take care of the house, and then get a bigger house and a different house, and then make sure that goes, and then update that house, and then figure out where you're gonna be, and then as the kids, you get them in the stuff and have them do the stuff and get them good at stuff, and then keep going in the career and move up in the career, and I'm doing all that. And here's what I found. I don't really feel complete. Like, I kind of wake up every day and I'm like, I'm living the dream. Is this it? And what you thought would happen when they told you to live the dream was you thought it would feel like a dream. You thought it would settle deep down in your soul. In fact, there's an angst. There's this unsettled feeling that many of us have. And let me put it to you this way. I think some of you would say, I feel unsettled because I thought living the dream would settle my soul. I thought it would. I thought if I did it all and got it all and chased it down. Like, Keith, I'm living the dream, and maybe even the dream, I had conversations with our team about calling this the American dream. I'm like, I'm doing the American dream. I'm living the dream. Why am I not sleeping better? Why am I still so anxious? Why am I depressed? Why am I hollow? Why do I have relationships that don't really feel like relationships? Why am I doing social media like everybody else, but it's vacuous, it's empty? Why is it that I lost the 15 pounds and I thought that would do it, but now I'm pricing Botox? Why is it that we updated that room and now we're looking at the bathroom and see if we can update that? Why was it that I worked so hard for the last promotion, but I still feel unsettled until I get the next promotion? Why am I so concerned about fitting in? Why do I just feel pressure? Why does it feel like satisfaction and security are just like always out of reach? I mean, I'm living the dream. I'm doing what they said. I'm busy with all the things. But there's angst. There's something going on. In this series, I want to suggest something. I want to suggest that the reason we feel that way is maybe it's not the right dream. I'm not even talking about like, maybe you would say, I'm not living that dream. You have a different dream that you're pursuing, but maybe deep down the reason you have the angst and the unsettledness and it's not really providing what you thought is maybe just, if we're honest, here's the truth. Maybe God would say we're busy living the wrong dream. Maybe we're busy living the wrong dream. Maybe Christians, Christ followers, disciples, maybe we're busy living for stuff that's not really what God said I dream for you. Maybe God actually wants something different. Maybe God wants something better. Maybe what we did was we accepted Jesus, but then we just Christianized the dream. We just added Jesus to the dream. And maybe that's a sign that it's actually not the dream God wants. Maybe non-Christian, person who doesn't follow God, maybe the fact that you don't even follow Jesus, but you're living the dream and you feel unsettled, maybe that's really a sign marker telling you that you were created for something different. Maybe there's something more. Maybe you're gonna hear this series and you're gonna go, I'm good. I don't have angst, I'm fine. But I bet you know someone who does. I bet maybe it'll show up at some point. And tonight, to be honest, it's a lot more triage than it is treatment. It's a lot more diagnosis than it is deliverance. In fact, you'll probably leave here this weekend and go, what do we do? I'm not sure that was really helpful. But I actually want to talk about it because I want to get to what's under, I think, the fact that we're living the wrong dream. So with that in mind, let's get moving. In the sports world, and a lot of worlds, but in the sports world particularly, there's a thing called scouting. And when you think of scouting, particularly of a team or an individual, what scouting is really designed to do is it's designed to give you a leg up on the competition so that you know the people that you're playing against and what are their skill sets and what are the moves that they do and what are the plays that they run or what's the thing that individual you're about to wrestle does or how does the person you're going to play in the tennis match serve. And scouting allows you to understand their tendencies and their practices so that you'll be better. And if you actually scout and do the work, it sets you up to succeed because you're prepared for what's coming at you. And isn't it true that we like that in general? Let's move away from sports. Let's all go back to when we were in school. Didn't we love when the teacher would tell us the exact questions that were going to be on the exam? I loved that. When they were like, it's going to be these things from this chapter in this way, study that stuff. And if you actually listened and paid attention, what you found out was that you had a higher rate of success when you knew what was coming. And that's not rocket science, but let me just say it to you this way, that anyone at anything in life should be better when they know the play ahead of time. Anyone should be better when they know the play ahead of time. If someone tells you in a moment, I'm going to step to my right and then I'm going to try to run past you and you're supposed to try to stop me. If they tell you what they're about to do, you'll have a greater success if you lean in and listen. And if they tell you what questions are on the exam, you'll do better. If you scout, you should know because you should be prepared. If you know what someone's going to tell you to do, or you know what they're going to ask, or you know the play they're going to run, your success rate should go up. Why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because here's what we should have all known. The dream that many of us are living, we were warned, don't live it. We were told, this is the play of the enemy of God, and this is what you're supposed to do. Don't get trapped. We were actually handed the playbook by God of his enemy that said, this is what he's going to go after you with. This is what he's always gone after you with. And whatever you do, don't get trapped or caught up in that play because it will not lean to meaning. In fact, I would say to many of us, the living the dream angst that we feel was predictable. And here's what it is. We should not be surprised, friends, by the status of our souls. If we actually, those of us who are Christians, disciples of Jesus, read the Bible, took God's word seriously, listened to Christ, paid attention to the whole thing, we would see the play that's been drawn out that's underneath so much of what we're doing with our day in, day out. And we would realize that the dream that many of us are living is the wrong dream. And if we keep living it, we're just going to end up hollow. If you have a Bible this weekend, I want to invite you to go to a small book in the New Testament. It's called 1 John. So I want you to find 1 John this weekend. 1 John, find it on your phone or your device. And as we deal with what should be predictable and how do we start to diagnose or triage the reality of what is underneath the angst that we feel in the dream that many of us are living. Here's what I want you to consider. The person writing this, John, walked and talked and lived amongst Jesus, and many would say he was Jesus' best friend. And John was the only one of the originals that that post-Jesus resurrection was not martyred. And so original disciples. And so John is actually a shaky hand old man in isolation writing some things. And he's a man that surveyed the life of Jesus and teachings of Jesus, and he's thought, and now he's writing in 1 John. And really, 1 John, it's a great book because it's a book that actually forces you to wrestle with, am I a Christian or not? I listened to one man say that 1 John is almost like a handy-dandy lie detector test to determine if you are a Christ follower. And it walks through, this is how you can know you're for real or not. And in part of this book, he lays out the play that our enemy is said he was going to run against us and that has been run since the beginning of humanity. And it's one that is underneath our dream, our American dream, our suburban dream. And here's what John, the shaky hand old man with the big gray beard, says. And here's what he writes in 1 John chapter 2. Do not Do not. It's a warning. Like when an older person who's seen it all comes to you and says, don't. It's your best interest. Do not. It's a straight out, you're being warned. Do not what? Ready? Do not love the world or anything in the world. Now right off the bat, some of us are going, wait a minute. For God so loved the world. Am I supposed to love the world or not love the world? It's the same word both in John 3 and in this, cosmos, but it has entirely different meanings. He's not talking simply about humans or humanity or creation. As he's using the word here, do not love the world or anything in the world, he's talking about the system of the world, the system of thought and values and purpose in the world. You might write this a different way. Do not love the ideas and concepts and wants of the world. Maybe another way to say it is he would be saying, don't be like everybody else. Maybe another way to say it is, if Christians want the same thing as non-Christians, that's probably wrong. Don't love the world, he says. Don't love the things of the world. Don't be chasing the world, John says. And then he continues, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love for the Father is not in them. I mean, it's pretty sobering. I mean, he's going to get to this word here in a second, but what he's really talking about is your cravings, your desires, your passions, the way you order your heart. And he says, if your heart is ordered to the things of the world, if your heart is ordered to the systems of the world, if your heart is ordered to this place, then the love of the Father is not even in you. That's not what Christians, that's not what disciples. Paul, a different writer, would say, that's what pagans do. That's what people far from God do. And then he continues to flesh this out for everything in the world. All the desires and systems and constructs, we might say for our context, for everything that living the dream tells us to do. For everything that the American dream can be about. And then he says it. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. He breaks down the play that our enemy runs that tempts us with. And he says what the enemy does, what he's been doing from the very beginning is he comes and he tempts you with the lust of the flesh, which is an over desire for your physical needs. He shows up and he tempts you and he says, see how new and shiny and beautiful that is? Aren't you discontent with what you currently have? Don't you need a newer, better one? And then he comes in and he says, and the pride of life, don't you want to feel important? Don't you want people to know who you are? Don't you want people to chant your name? He says, this stuff comes not from the Father, but from the world. Why am I saying we're living the wrong dream? Because as we get into this weekend, what we're realizing, the diagnosis, the triage is these things are often the things that we're told to go get. I mean, come on, let's be honest. We didn't necessarily mean it this way, but some of this is why you were told to go to college. So you could have this. Some of us were killing ourselves or are killing ourselves for the promotion so we can have this. Some of us are raising our children in certain ways so they'll have this. Keith, are you saying advancement? Are you saying hard work? Are you saying productivity? Are you saying success is wrong? No, I'm not saying any of those things are wrong. They're all in their right place, necessary, and we're going to talk about those things over the course of this series. But what I'm saying is, if those are your primary cravings and motivations, then you're off. If you're a disciple. I mean, then he says this, it doesn't come from the Father, but it comes from the world. Christian, would you be willing to consider this weekend that your passions and cravings and desires are shaped more by culture than they are by God sometimes? They're shaped more by what you think matters than what God says matters. And then he comes back and he just reminds us in verse 17 why this is so significant for us to get past. Because the world and its desires pass away. It's not going to last. It's not your home. You're buying new furniture for your hotel room. You don't even live there. Can you imagine hiring an interior decorator for your hotel room to upgrade that baby for a 2-day stay? He says, this world in its present form is passing away. You don't live here. You won't be there forever. So if that's the case, you're going to a different world. Why are you playing by this world's plans and schemes? But whoever does the will of God lives forever. One scholar I read, he said this way, he said, only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will ultimately last. And yet somehow we're living the dream. We're caught up in it and it's not delivering. And here's what I want to tell you. You were warned. John told us. Let me say it to you this way. Humanity is busy chasing what we were warned not to chase. Don't chase the world in these things. Don't have your passions and desires and cravings leading you to spin your wheels. God said don't do it, and yet we keep pursuing it. It's like when your mom said, don't touch the stove or you will get burned. And you said, I'll find out if she's right on my own. And you touched it and you got burned. God has come to you and he has warned you and he has said, don't chase it. Don't fall in love with the world. Don't be like everybody else. Don't do the things of this world. It's when the desires in your heart that could be good, could be okay, move to lust. They move to an overdrive. They move to an unhealthy craving. Here's what I want to tell you, because I know sometimes this can feel restrictive. God actually has better for you than the world does. And he's not telling you to stay away from all that stuff because he's mean. He's actually telling you to stay away from all that stuff because he's amazing. Because he knows what's better. You know, there's some theologians that have said it this way. The world tells us to settle for the shallow end when God's calling us out to the depths of the ocean. But we're busy chasing what we were warned not to chase. And then we wonder why we feel exhausted, angst, burned, frustrated, and discouraged. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Christian or non-Christian, you just need to hear this. I think this is probably one of the most loving things anyone's ever told me, and I want to say it to you. Angst in your life will be present anytime there's a gap between the desires of the divine and the desires that are mine. Whenever there's a gap between the desires of God and the desires of Keith, there's going to be angst. Whenever there's a gap between the desires of my Creator and the desires of this creation, there's going to be angst because, it never makes sense to settle for the creation when we're designed to be with the Creator. And whenever these desires are spaced out, whenever I'm not in line, whenever I buy the lie to chase the things of the world, the gap between the desires of the divine and mine are such that I will feel discouraged. Let's go back to the passage and just pull out these desires, and I think we'll see that this is the dream that so many of us are chasing. And I know this. Some of you are going, okay, but like Keith, again, just give me the line. What's the line of where I'm okay and then I moved into I crossed it? Why are we always looking for the just following Jesus enough line? Is that how you want your spouse to love you? Baby, just give me the line that lets you know I'm still in. That I love you still. Is that like one date a month? Valentine's present. Yeah? Good, I'll live there. I mean, you would never want someone. Why is it that we're always looking for the lowest path to say, I love God just enough to make sure I'm good with God, rather than saying, God is so amazing. How do I go in more? How do I love him more? How do I pursue him more? How do I know him more? How do I experience more of what he wants? And let's just be honest, it's because we're trapped in the world. So what does the world say? What does the dream tell us to do? Well, number one, he warns us back when he talks about the lust of the flesh. We would call it this way. We would say it's pleasure abuse. We would say it's pleasure abuse. If you want to write down a definition for lust of the flesh, just say natural desires gone wild. Natural desires gone wild. The lust of the flesh is your natural desire for hunger gone wild. Your natural desire for physical touch gone wild. Your natural desire for thirst gone wild. Your natural desire for just enjoyment gone wild. It's your natural desire for sex gone wild. It's when it was okay and it was good and it was a desire and it was something you were pursuing, but it went into overdrive and suddenly the pursuit of that physical satisfaction defined your life in such a way that it became unhealthy. It became a lust of the flesh. You think about a balloon. A balloon of any size is designed to hold a certain amount of air. And you can put a small amount and you keep putting more and you can keep putting more and you can get to the size that it's designed to be. But if you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going, eventually the balloon bursts. God gave you some desires, natural desires that are good, and you're designed to fill those up. But if you keep filling them up in a way where it becomes pleasure abuse, here's what happens. Food moves from good to it moves to gluttony. Sex moves from in the right confines and healthy to immorality. And it manifests itself in not just sex outside of marriage, but immorality and pornography and affairs. Physical touch moves from something that's good to something that you will scheme to have even when it's inappropriate. You begin to find yourself saying, I need to feel a high so much, I'll even do things that are unnatural to my body to get them. And before we know it, we're addicted to substances that we know medically are bad for us, but we're at pleasure abuse. The lust of the flesh has driven some of us to have an addiction to tobacco or an addiction to alcohol or an addiction to a drug of some kind because we just needed to feel. Why? To escape? To numb? Because nothing else was giving us the pleasure? Nothing wrong with pleasure. God wants us to have pleasure. God designed us to have pleasure through food, through touch, through sex, through enjoyment of life. But when we abuse it, it becomes the lust of the flesh. And when the lust of the flesh shows up, what it does is it corrodes our judgment. It numbs our ability to do relationships in a healthy way. It makes us dysfunctional. It shifts our morality in an unhealthy space. And it begins to prioritize your life in ways that you can't get back. And what does the dream tell you? The dream says if it feels good, do it. Oh, you should be happy. You should do whatever you should do to feel good. If some is good, more is better. And yet we're being warned. And humanity is chasing the very thing we weren't supposed to chase. Not that we weren't supposed to chase pleasure. We weren't supposed to abuse it. We weren't supposed to corrode it outside of the things of God. And John says, it's in the world. Don't do it. So I think for some of us, living the dream actually means this. Living the dream just means you're told to get more sensory satisfaction. And yet, it's not working. Because after tonight's high or tomorrow's high, you're going to need another one. So he warns us. He says, don't chase pleasure abuse. Don't chase the thing I warned you not to chase. It's loving the world. The second thing he said for the desire warning, this is tough. Ready? Possession accrual. This is the lust of the eyes. When we see things and we say, I must have it. I must have it. If I don't have it, my life will be incomplete. You ever notice how sometimes you need things you didn't even know you needed till you saw them? And even once you really saw it, you don't really need it. You just now want it. Like there's some of you that you're like, I went to a boat show one time with a friend because a friend told me I wanted to go to this boat show. Now I need a boat. Saw this car. I mean, come on. You have a closet full of clothes. But as soon as you went to the mall, I gotta have it. Gotta have it. We end up in a place where we're constantly pursuing whether it's lust that says I want a woman who is not mine, or I need another car even though the one that I have is just great. Come on, lust of the flesh leads to lust of the eyes, and lust of the eyes leads us to covet. And coveting, I know you won't send me a thank you email for saying this. It makes us materialistic and greedy. You ever had like a group of 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds that you've seen this happen? I've seen this happen in church and in classrooms. I've seen it happen in my house. I've seen it happen in other people's house. I've seen it happen at daycare where somebody opens the toy box, or they get the bin off of the shelf, or they open the closet and they get out all the toys and they throw them down, and all the kids just run and they start grabbing, and you hear them, mine, 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 no, I had it, mine. And they just keep pursuing, and they pick it up, and they've got an armful. I want to suggest to you that doesn't stop when we turn 25, 35, 45, or 55. Some of us have plenty, and we keep reaching for more, saying, mine. We got so much stuff under our arms. More. When is the last time? When's the last time you just said enough is enough? You know what this keeps us from? This keeps us from generosity. It drives our houses into constantly feeling like we have to have more. It sets the tone that we will do anything to have more stuff. It keeps us from being content, appreciating things. It drives if we go to sleep at night and feel like we're okay. Oh, I know this. You're making me feel guilty. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just trying to get you to think. Don't love the world. Don't chase the world. Don't have the lust of the eyes. Why? Because it won't satisfy. You'll have angst. And yet we're chasing the very thing we weren't supposed to chase. We were warned. So let's be honest. Living the dream is oftentimes just a pursuit of more stuff. More stuff. There are some of you right now at a campus this weekend, and you're like, crap, he's talking about me. He's talking about me. Because I know that I really don't need it, and but I'm craving it. I'm driven by it. It's actually defining my identity. And here's what you know. You'll get it, and it'll be great for like a week. Why? Because this world in its present form is passing away. He says, don't get caught up in this idea of pleasure abuse or possession accrual. And then the third one, this is really tough. He says this is pride of life, position advancement. Keith, you don't want me to move forward in my job? No, that's not what I'm saying. You don't want me to do better. You don't want me to advance at work. It's not what I'm saying. But he's saying the pride of life, this position advancement chase. It's where you just look around and what you want, it's what you're driven by, is the praise of other people. You would never say you want people to worship you, but you want people to think you're awesome. And you're pursuing status, and you're pursuing position, and you're pursuing all the things that you need to do so people will think you're significant. And it might be as superficial as many friends as you can get on social media, or it might be what you're doing at your job. I remember one time I was in a foreign country, and I was sitting down and I was drinking Coca-Cola. And I was watching these two boys climbing these trees. And they didn't know I was watching them. And they were climbing trees right next to each other, and the one boy would get up and he would be just higher than the other boy, and the other boy would look over and he would go, no. And he would get a little higher. And he would look over and he would see him and he would go, And he'd get a little higher and a little higher and a little higher, and they just kept going. And I'm like, y'all gonna fall. Isn't that what we do? I see where you are. I'll get above you. I'll get above you. I'll get above you because if I'm above you, then I'm somebody. If I get above you, then I'm important. If I get above you, then I will really matter and I will sleep better. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because some of you have gotten to the top of the tree and you still have the angst. You're still unsettled because it's not the dream you're supposed to live, but you're living the dream for position advancement. And you know what? That position advancement, it just might have killed your family. That position advancement cost you your friendships. You hurt people in the process. That position advancement is everything you have your identity in, and if it was taken away, you would be a shell of who you are. Some of the most guilty people I know of this are pastors. When we get in circles, you just wonder who's going to say it first. Well, how many you running these days? How big's your church? And this is what you're thinking in your head. I hope they say smaller than mine. I hope they say smaller than mine. 2,000. That's cute. What's it like having that little church? Yeah. Talk to me when you get in the fours, Chuck. Why is it somehow we have a little bit of giddy up in our step and suddenly we think the meal's going to taste better because we're further? As the position advancement. And sometimes the dream that we're chasing and we're living for, it's not just about sensory satisfaction. It's not just about stuff. It's about status. Come on, if you were to boil down the American dream, isn't the American dream that so many of us are living, isn't it really about the pursuit of pleasure and possessions and position? It's almost like the American dream in so many ways is about the very thing that John said, don't go chase. Because if you do, you'll love the world and the things of it, and it's passing away. And we were warned. And yet here we are in the most powerful, most affluent country at any time in human history with access and ability to go chase the stuff. And we have all the stuff and we're hollow. And some of us, we have it and we're Christians. And John said, don't go after it. Don't chase it. So what we're going to do in this series is we're going to talk about how this affects our relationships, how we bring this same cycle to our relationships, to our busyness, to our jobs, to our emotions. And we're going to use this filter of these things that we weren't supposed to chase and see how they're showing up and see what God's answer for us. I warned you that it might feel a little bit challenging because this pursuit of the dream that is not necessarily the right dream is keeping us from doing hard things that are actually the right things. And I said this weekend, I'm not going to solve it, but I do want to give you some hope. And the hope that I want to try to give you just to consider this weekend is some of you are thinking, Keith, I get it. And I don't even know that I'd argue with you, but come on, is it even possible in our culture, in our context, in our world to live for victory? And I want to just say, if you're thinking about if it's possible, just do this for me this week. Consider Jesus. Consider Jesus. While Jesus doesn't live in Central Ohio in 2020, Jesus, the Bible says, was tempted in every way that we were tempted. That Jesus walked on earth and experienced all of these things in front of him. In fact, one time, Jesus hadn't eaten for 40 days. And the enemy of God came up to him and said, hey, why don't you turn the stones into bread and eat? After all, you're hungry. And Jesus says, nah, man doesn't live by bread alone. In other words, I know it's a pleasure I could solve, but I'm not driven by my pleasures. It's another time where just Jump and I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world, man. Can't you see them? Don't you want all those things? Jesus said another time, he's like, you know what? I'll tell you where I stand with materialism. I don't even have a home or a pillow. I live a pretty simple, meager life. And then Jesus was one time faced with the reality of, hey, maybe you should just let everyone know who you are. And he said, I'll tell you who I am. I'm not one that came to be served, but one that serves. Although I'm the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, I'm a servant. Jesus, who had every right to claim status, emptied himself, became a servant, obedient to death, even death on a cross. Because Jesus, who walked this earth and was tempted by the same things that you and I were tempted by, said, those things are not the dream I came to do. The dream I came to do is my Father's will. And then here's the crazy thing, ready? The same Spirit that lived inside Jesus, that is Jesus, that rose him from the dead, lives in you. So is it possible? Yes. If the same God who raised Jesus from the dead is inside of you, if you're a follower of God, then you have the power of God to overcome the world. The question is, how do we tap into that and how do we get after that? So here's what I want you to do this weekend. I want you to reflect on a simple question. Maybe it's not simple, it's short in words, but complicated in our soul. And here's what it is. What are the consistent cravings of my life? When it's just me and my silence and my head, what do I think about? What am I driven by? What do I pursue? Well, if you're like me, you probably say, well, Keith, it's kind of all over the place and it depends on the day. But yeah, but think about it in terms of food for cravings. You might like Mexican some days, but in general, you're an Italian food person. You're a seafood person. And you have exceptions, but in general, when you wake up, what do you think about? And by the way, if you tell me your cravings, I'll show you your diet. I'll show you what you eat. I'll show you what you pursue. So what are your cravings? Do you just dream about how to get up the tree further? Do you just dream about how to feel better with pleasure? Do you just dream about the next thing you can have? And where is God in this? Where is Christ in this? Where does it show up? What are your desires? What are your cravings? Land the plane this weekend with this. I was thinking about this idea when I started about scouting and plays. I was reminded of this story. And I think as I get ready to tell this story, I just want to tell you that one of the things my dad used to tell me a lot that really shaped my life was, he used to tell me average is average for a reason. And he would say, you don't want to be normal. And people have gone on to say, like, normal is frustrated and broke and searching and disillusioned and discouraged. But I think one of the reasons so many of us are normal is because we're just doing what's normal. There was a story one time from ex-Ohio State football coach Jim Tressel. Before he ever coached at Ohio State, he was coaching at a small school and he was the offensive coordinator and he was calling plays. So on the first play of the game, he ran this handoff up the middle and it got like 4 yards. So on the second play, he ran the exact same play and it got like 3.5 yards. And on the third play, he ran the exact same play and it got 5 yards. And so the head coach called up on the headphones up to the booth and he said, "Coach, do we have another play?" And he called back down and he said, "We have plenty of plays and I'll run a different one when they stop it." If you go back to the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve were placed there, the serpent looked and here's the play he ran on Eve. Eve, see that fruit? Doesn't it look good to eat? Doesn't it look so nice? Isn't it so shiny? Did God really say, because if you eat it, what you'll really be is like him? What Satan ran back then and what he's still running today, friends, is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And you know why he's still running it? Because it's still working. It's still working. And I look at you as your pastor and I say, we can know better. Let's not love the world. Let's not chase the things in it. Let's not get caught up in this. Let's stop chasing the things that God warned us not to chase. Because maybe instead of angst, what we would actually experience is abundance. My hope in this series is that we would come back, we would engage an awareness of the play that is being run against us, and that awareness would set us free to start winning. I hope that you'll come back next week and begin to engage this, specifically in areas of our life. Let's pray together. God, I'm so reminded consistently that you didn't call us to a mediocre life or a normal life. You didn't call us to the normalcy of the world. You called us to something radical and something different. And God, as we try to process this in our lives, I pray that you would help us to think through this in ways that are not condemning or guilty where they don't need to be, in ways where I'm not saying, hey, you can't move forward and advance and pursue and dream and improve, but that we would honestly let your Spirit do a diagnostic on our heart, and we would see our cravings, and we would see if we're just chasing what everyone else is chasing. And God, in this, I pray for those who are far from you, that they wouldn't hear about rules and rituals and restrictions, but they would hear about a reigning King who loves them, a God who wants the best for them. So God, set us free from the play that's been run so consistently throughout human history and lead us into abundance in you. We pray this in the name of Christ. Amen.